Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to have a small a session on how to set up a company or why should you register your business in Singapore. I'm now going to present my screen and then we can subsequently initiate our discussion. Yeah, so we are starting up with us. We are starting up with a complete guide on Singapore. So just a moment. Yeah. So why should now the topic for today, today's discussion would be why should we set up our business in Singapore? How should we start a company in Singapore? The annual tax, legal and secretarial compliances of Singapore setup. How is Taxmantra enabling startups to set up their business in Singapore in a hassle-free way? Coming down to the very first topic is why should we set up our business in Singapore? Now, Singapore is a strategically located country. It is really small country which is providing a massive development and which is actually providing massive investment opportunities as well as massive business scales. It has actually become a global leading hub for entrepreneurs. The one of the major reasons for this is that English is widely used in Singapore, which is actually has become one of the main working language, providing for easy way of communication between startups, between the startups, between the founders, and between the correlated parties. The second most, the another factor for this Singapore becoming a global destination for entrepreneurship is presence of various skilled resources, efficient and open economy. The education system of Singapore, it is also quite good, which provides for bringing up fresh new faces, talents, and facilitating in the growth of Singapore companies. Now, the second point, the third aspect should be stringent IPR. Singapore's IPR is widely and is one of the topmost IPR that a country that in the world. Sorry, in the world, it is one of the most highly rated IPR protection, IPR. The fourth point and the fourth pointer is that the Singapore, it has a alluring and stable business climate. The government, the political situation in Singapore is also quite stable, which is a very healthy working environment for businesses. Now, the fourth aspect is that Singapore has one of the busiest port. It has top investments and it has top location for businesses, and it has well connectivity, well transport connectivities, and it in and around the Asia Pacific region. Now, in fact, in 2021, now the private equity and venture capital deals in Singapore, it reached to nearly 16.54 billion US dollars, which is actually quite a massive growth compared to 5.15 billion dollars, which was which is quite a sharp increase from 2020. Now we are moving forward with why Singapore is becoming such an attractive place for foreign firms. Now, in the recent times, and in what we have been doing for majority of our clients is setting up bases in Singapore for basically for Indian or in foreign entrepreneurship, setting up their base or headquarters in Singapore and simultaneously working from all around the world from their subsidiaries or different branch companies. Now, what what actually is the reason that these companies or these entrepreneurs they provide or they ask for, they are comfortable with setting up a Singapore base. Now, the first aspect is ease of doing business. Singapore is actually world's best place to do a business in Singapore. See, a company registration in Singapore is, it can be done in a matter of just a couple of hours. Like in India, we take a bit of time, and it takes now these days it takes a couple of days to register. But however, in Singapore, we can do the same in just a matter of couple of hours. Singapore, the second aspect is Singapore has robust economy. Now, Singapore's free market economy, it completely depends upon how finance, it depends upon trade, and it depends upon manufacturing as well. Most of Singapore's the GDP growth, it is coming down from services sector only, uh, uh, and the services sector predominantly is one of the greatest aspect for providing employment. Hence, the unemployment rate in Singapore is also quite low. It has low inflation, and it highly promotes foreign investments in Singapore. And they also provide different kind of subsidies for housing, for transportation, education, and even health benefits is also available to people in Singapore. Now, uh, the third aspect for foreigners or uh, for the entrepreneurs preferring Singapore is the attractive tax policies. Now, this is one of the major points. Singapore actually provides good taxation rebate for startups, for companies, which we will discuss in the later half of our session. And now the tax policies, they are pro entrepreneurs, they are pro business. They support business for there are huge tax rebates for startups, for companies in the first couple of years, and then post that the companies are charged at the rate of 17%. The Singapore companies, they also have DTAA in place with most Singapore government, sorry. It has DTAA in place with almost 50 countries, or more than even 50 countries. One of the major points also is that Singapore actually facilitates 100% foreign ownership. Now in India, at least one share has to be held by the third party. Beneficial ownership can be transferred, but at least one share has to be held for a resident from resident in India. But Singapore does not even bars or put restrictions like that. Singapore, it supports 100% foreign ownership as well. Singapore also supports free currency movement. Now, a company can be registered with different currency as well. Like instead of SGD, we can register our company with currency denomination of USD as well. Just for an example, and there are no restrictions on capital movement. I mean, there are fewer RBI compliances. There are just like in India, Singapore does not have their main bank compliances while sending or while exchanging or while moving capital out of Singapore. The next point is Singapore. It is a financial hub in Asia, and finance facilities are available in quite low rates. Now, Singapore, it has nearly 128 commercial banks. They have pretty good numbers of merchant banks, fund managers, private equity, capital market service license holders, which provides easy funds to private companies or to private parties, as well as to private parties at predominantly low interest rate, which is quite helpful for expansion of the companies. The next is availability of skilled workforce. I mean, Singapore has Singapore has a population which is a mixture of American nationalities, Indian nationalities, and many other British nationalities, Chinese nationalists. Now, which is one of the major factors for bringing in quality employment. They also have availability of skilled workforce. They produce talent, which is they have good education system, and they provide talent with every passing year. They have liberal immigration policy as well. I mean, visa facilities. They have good visa facilities in Singapore. Now, the next is strategic geographical location and superior infrastructure. Just a moment. Just a moment. Yeah, the next point is strategic geographical location and superior infrastructure. Now, Singapore is actually located at the heart of Southeast Asia, and they provide for global connectivity, which help for fast-growing markets like India and China. Infrastructure in Singapore, it is also highest in the world, which reflects what I mean, which reflects the growth rate of Singapore, indicating high level of investment, years of political stability, brilliant healthcare infrastructure, education system, low corruption rates, transportation, and general economic prosperity amongst the population. The next part is benefits of startups. Now, Singapore, they provide attractive grants and schemes to local startups, which motivates them and which brings out the best in entrepreneurship to carry forward their business. The next pointers that we're going to discuss is startup ecosystem of Singapore. Now, Singapore has been recently ranked as in the seventh spot of startup ecosystem in the world. Now, it is just behind countries, or it is just behind US, Germany, countries like that. And now it has also toppled China, and now it has moved ahead with from China. It has moved up by nearly 3 positions, if I'm not mistaken. The second point is now in Asia Pacific region. Singapore has, since it has toppled China, now it is the highest ranked startup ecosystem in Asia Pacific region. The third point, basically why the startup ecosystem is so brilliantly set up, is that there is a good model for innovation, and it continues to be a really small state, highly overperforming, and it has a powerful global business destination as well. I mean, facilitating with good road with good connectivities, and with good government policies, with good ecosystem. This is providing a good benchmark, a good platform for startups to grow. Now, Singapore also have a very good tax regime. They have good ease of doing business. They have a power to attract talent, maintain competitiveness on a global scale. Now, the next point of discussion that we have is how to base or how to start up a company in Singapore. Now, Singapore facilities, we have to setting up a company in Singapore is quite easy, and I mean it can be done from our doorstep also. The key requirements to setting up a company in Singapore is that we should at least have one shareholder, one resident director, one company secretary, one physical Singapore office address, initial paid up of one SGD1, or both, and both director and company secretary cannot be saved. Now, at least one, there should be a one shareholder holding shares in the company. Now, it can be 100% shareholding is also permitted by the Singapore authorities to foreign companies or foreign individuals, any foreign person. They should have at least one director, resident director. Even a nominee director can also be a resident director, and foreign directors can subsequently function from for their foreign locations. There should be one company secretary. Then registered physical office address should be there. Coming down to post incorporation obligations. Now, Singapore should once the company is set up, the filings and all has been there. The filings to Singapore authorities been made. Now, the post incorporation obligations will start from opening a corporate bank account, which is the primary thing to do when the company is set up. And then if the company, depending upon what business the company is doing, Singapore companies activity, depending upon companies activities, business licenses has to be procured. Company will issue share certificates once with the company stamp or company seal, and application of GST depending upon what is the turnover of the company. If say for example, if the company's turnover is expected to be more than 1 billion, then the company must register for GST. Now, what the next portion of discussion is, why should we register? Why should we register in Singapore? Now, there are quite a few benefits of registering a company in Singapore. The Singapore incorporation process is really simple, and it has a minimal document. The primer document of from a passport, utility bill, or in case of corporate entities, COI or MOA, AOA, the charter documents, directors documents shall suffice to incorporate a company. There is no even requirement of a physical documentation or physical verification for opening a company in Singapore. They have simplified tax regime. They're just like India's complex tax structure, Singapore's tax structure is quite simple. They do not even have multiple taxes or multiple portion of taxes to be submitted throughout the year. Usually licenses are not required for registering a company in Singapore. Singapore incorporation process is really fast. Just like we discussed earlier, in a matter of couple of hours, the incorporation processes can be completed. As we have already discussed, there is no restriction on foreign ownership of business. And the next pointer is most of the types of business activities that are allowed in Singapore. There is no restriction on what kind of business should be held or what kind of business should be done. Moving forward, we are going to discuss why entrepreneurs, they prefer registering a company in Singapore. Now, Singapore, the basic or the requirement that the advantages that entrepreneurs get while with setting up their business in Singapore from the company's aspect is that the company, it can sue or be sued in its own name. Now, directors and shareholders, they have really limited liability. If they have their liability valid up to paying off their shares. Now, if they have paid the paid up share capital or the call money on their shares, their liability is limited up to that only. They have no personal liabilities for any kind of holding in Singapore. Profits are taxed at 17% only. There is no tax on capital gain. This is one of the most important point, that Singapore government gives a leeway on capital gains. Even no LTCG or STCG is charged. Tax is charged on them. Raising capital is really is simpler and easier process. I mean, there is no multiple filings to be done to ACRA, or there is no RBI compliance. There is no main bank central bank compliances that has to be done. So once the money comes in, a registration to ACRA shall suffice for any entrepreneur to use their funds. They have flexibility in determination of financial year as well. Now, Singapore company, it can have a 12-year financial year. It can the 12 months from financial year, it can start off from the date of incorporation, and then from there 12 months is suffice, or it completely depends upon how the entrepreneurs they wish to have their the financial year of the company. I mean, they can align it with their any other entities if they are having, and if they want to create a holding subsidiary relationship between them, they can easily align them. A company can own property in its own name. This is also facilitated, and the Companies Act, it does not provide for lesser. It provides for lesser compliances. I mean, there are not much of compliances, barring the annual compliances or the event-based compliances. There are not much annual or yearly compliances or monthly compliances imposed by the Companies Act on the companies. So it is fairly simple and easy to regulate companies, or easy to manage the companies in Singapore. The next aspect, as we were discussing, is annual compliances for Singapore private companies. Now, the Singapore companies, they have certain annual compliances that has to be made to both ACRA, which is Accounting and Corporate Regulatory Authority, where under which all the filings as per the Companies Act is made to Singapore authorities. And then there is IRAS, which is Inland Revenue Authority of Singapore, wherein all tax related formalities or all tax related filings has to be made. And now these annual filings, they has to be made for both active and dormant companies. Now, annual returns with ACRA, it has to be filed within 7 months. AGM has to be held within 6 months, and annual return has to be filed within 7 months. Now, this can be done only, annual returns can be filed only after AGM is held, and after all the financial statements that the company has prepared, it is sent. If the company is not going to, or if the company is not supposing to hold an AGM, so even AGM is also but if even AGM is also dependent upon the private companies, whether they want to hold it or they do not want to call for an AGM. Now, after the financial year end, for dormant companies, AGM is also exempted. They are also exempted from preparing financial statements, since a dormant company means there is hardly any business. So Singapore government, considering that, Singapore government and Singapore authorities, they've also given a leeway for preparing financial statements. Now, companies also have a time to extend. Companies can also apply for extension of time to 60 days. And if now to file the annual return, now what kind of penalty the government authorities are going to impose if annual return is not filed within the due date? Now, if the annual return is not filed, late lodgement penalty will rise up to nearly $600 for each late filing. It completely depends upon the whims and wishes of the Singapore authorities to impose penalty. Maximum limit is $600. Now, what annual compliances has to be made with IRAS? We have to file annual tax return before November 30th. Now, Singapore government, they adopt a preceding year basis for taxation. Now, say for example, if your company's financial year is ending in March 21, the financials and the IRAS annual tax return, it has to be filed by November 2022. So this is what the Singapore taxation policy has been formed. The profits for financial year ending in the preceding year, they will form the basis of filing for taxation or tax return in this current year. Directors are accountable, and they have to make sure that the filing has been done. And if any company falls out or misses filing this annual return with IRAS, it will be considered as an offense, and the IRAS IRAS may penalize or even proceed with prosecution. The next filing that has to be made as part of annual compliances is ECI. Now, ECI is, ECI is an estimated company's taxable profit, and this has to be made for a year of assessment. So Singapore companies, they have to declare revenue and ECI by filing ECI form with IRAs, and it should be done within 3 months from FYE of a company. So basically, if your company's FYE falls on March 31st, then ECI has to be made by June 30th. And even if a company is not, if is estimated, or if it is estimated that a company does not have any chargeable income, then nil ECI has to be filed with IRAS. Now, speaking of annual returns, how can we miss on audit requirements for companies? Auditors, Singapore government has also given leeway on appointment of auditors. Generally, auditors should be appointed within 3 months from incorporation. But for small companies or small groups, Singapore government has also given a leeway to the private companies or small companies to have this audit exemption. Now, what computes, or what is the qualification criteria to be called as a small company? So we have to basically comply from any two of the we have to qualify for any two of the criteria to be called a small company. Now, the first is it should be private company. That is a mandatory question, and that is a mandatory requirement. The second portion is that there should be that we should 2 out of all these 3 criteria: total annual revenue of greater than equal to $10 million, total assets of greater than 10 or greater than equal to $10 million, or number of employees greater than equal to 50. Now, Singapore company must qualify total annual revenue should be smaller than $10 million, smaller than or equal to 10 million. Total assets should be lesser than $10 million or equal to 10 million, and number of employees should be less than 50. 2 out of these criteria should be ticked so that we can qualify for the small company. Now, for a company which is part of group, same criteria are to be followed. It should be a small group, and it should be a small group. It should meet 2 of the criteria on a consolidated basis. That is, annual revenue lesser than 10 million, total assets lesser than or greater equal to 10 million, number of employees lesser than or equal to 50. The next portion of discussion is startup grants by Singapore government. Now, financial resources in Singapore, it is one of the major factors which is attracting entrepreneurs from the world. Now, government has introduced policies which support and which helps to grow business through various cash incentives. Now, basically, Startup SG, now Standards, Productivity Innovation Board Spring, it has brought a startup assistance scheme under one roof, which provides for great startup incentives. Now, the motto of startup is to provide Singapore base with easy funding, mentorship, and to aid startup business into successful ventures. Under startup, qualifying startups, it can have access to cash grants, equity financing, and business loan. So to just name a few of startups, startup incentives that the SG authorities have provided are Startup SG Founder, Startup Tech, Startup SG Talent, Net Startup SG Accelerator, Startup SG Infrastructure, Startup SG Loan, Startup SG Equity, Startup SG Investors. There are certain qualification criteria as well, which would facilitate startups to qualify for these incentive schemes that the government is providing. Now, tax benefits for startups. So for tax benefits, startup have full exemption on first $100,000 for normal chargeable income, and then there is 50% exemption on next $200,000 for normal chargeable income. Now, this startup incentive or startup tax exemption is not applicable for investment holding companies because the major reason for this is that the investment holding companies, they derive passive income, like they have income from interest, they have interest income or more of a dividend income, and hence they do not promote much of business activities. Hence investment holding companies are typically barred from this startup exemption. For qualification criteria for tax exemption for startups is the company should be incorporated in Singapore. It should be a tax resident. It should have a total share capital which is not more than 20 people, 20 shareholders. Shareholders should be individuals, and at least one shareholder should hold 10% of total ordinary shares of the company. Speaking about speaking about all these startup related activities, or why the company is, why foreigners, or why people all around the globe are preferring moving to Singapore. We also provide or enable startups to set up their business in Singapore. We have Taxmantra. As a company, it has a close strategic tie-up with both India and Singapore government agencies. We are helping companies to develop ecosystem in different parts of the world, like India, Singapore, Dubai. In fact, we have been referred by Singapore government for various of our agencies in India. We have also helped several emerging companies in establishing holding subsidiary relationship globally, and we are also assisting them in their cross-border taxation and legal compliances as well. We take care of most of your business running compliances. We provide advisory services as well. So basically, our services starts right from setting up our business to maintaining your day-to-day compliances with annual compliances and event-based compliances as well. We also help in setting up in company's bank account and visa application in Singapore as well. We make our structure is such that we are a one-stop destination for all that your company needs to run in Singapore, US, Dubai. We also provide IPF services as well. Coming to the end of discussion, we have primarily covered with what setup requirements and how a startup is enabled in how startup functions in Singapore. Our global, we are working and we have global delivery centers, our offices in Singapore, India, US, Dubai, and UK. You can contact us or reach out on the below given on the information as provided in this slide. Thank you everyone for joining in, and I wish you a good day.